Enzi, kuja. Umeappoint nani? Oh, lady in red, come. So that people, then every group, I hope you have somebody who is presenting for 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Give us the highlight. Otherwise, we hope the rapporteurs have captured this very well, and part of it will overflow to tomorrow. Twende. Kuna shairi.
Good afternoon. Good evening. With the help of my group mates, we shall present what we discussed in our group. We focused on core interest 1 and core interest 4. Thank you. She has to stand here because she's Gen Z Wanguvu. So we're just going to give you highlights of emerging issues drawn from the two interests, core interest 1 and 4. There is marginalization of vulnerable persons. That is, we talked of the widows, the orphans, the persons with disability, the LGBTQ community, the intersex in programming, weak governance and accountability as one of the other emerging issue, rising gender-based violence that includes even cases of male gender being targeted, low public awareness and civic engagement of the community at the grassroots. We also have economic inequalities and social injustice within the communities. And this came out so well with regards to the informal settlements and even in the grassroots communities in the villages. Then climate justice and the issue of carbon credit going to the people who are not part of the community. A highlight of the Kakamega forest case came up. The other issue was the issue of how do we support even the people doing informal settlement. A key issue of issues of permit, single business permit to even the people in the low income areas that are trying to do businesses. Summary of our recommendations are as follows. Human dignity must be at the center of governance and practice. Vulnerable people groups need protection and intentional inclusion. Citizen leaders and communities all have a role in promoting human rights. Awareness, accountability, and inclusive policies are key to achieving justice and addressing economic inequalities affecting the dignities of the vulnerable people groups and the community. Group members, is there something pertinent that we've left in the summary? Haya, mimi ni mtoto wa Nyayo, nilikula kunywa maziwa. Moderator, naomba makofi ya Nyayo. From the causes.
Yeah, the issue where foreign interests are being given diplomatic immunity in the country, and we don't know what safeguards they're going through for them to be given such immunities.
Thank you.
Thank you very much mtoto wa Nyayo. Akielekea kuketi, tumpe makofi moja. Asante. National interest. Ilingane na preamble. We start with individuals, then to the most marginalized community, to dignity for everybody. Funga. Fungua. Thank you very much for that. For additional and especially for tomorrow, I wonder, do you think our defense system, our national police service, our intelligence system furthers our sovereignty? Is it for national interest? Unajua kama why did we arrest Kizza Besigye? Na hawa watu wote huwa tunashika hata watoto wetu. Is that national interest? Maybe things some of the systems that need to change to respond to national interest. Haya, now to group 2. Group 2 was dealing with the economy and ECOSOC. ECOSOC, right? The rich people who are carrying the budget bag, trade, our food. And you can hear the first group has already said for people to get dignity, we must think about the business environment and whether the rates we charge and licenses further national interest of everybody. Karibu.
Thank you. My name is Ismail Abdul Karim from Slum Peace and Empowerment Center in the informal settlement of Kibra. So we were able to discuss on the economic sovereignty, and one thing we were discussing about the economic sovereignty is that as Kenyans, we still lack the sovereignty to determine how our economy is run. And the manifestations of this is our currency is still affected and influenced by the foreign currency. That is how, let me say, like the dollar. When the dollar rises, our value here depreciates. So that means we cannot even service our debts. That's number one. Number two, our cost of living becomes high. It was evident, I think that was 2 years back, when our government was not able to pay the debt. That was the Euro bond, I think, if I'm not mistaken, because now the dollar value rose. The second manifestation of our economic sovereignty is our policies are still determined by the international policy or international bodies like the IMF and the World Bank. So there's no way our budget will start with the national interest when still our policies are affected by the IMF. So the first thing that comes when we are drafting our budget is, what did IMF say? If IMF said we should lay off, let's say, the teachers, so what we'll start with is that the budget in education will reduce because we should not have teachers. If the IMF said we should increase taxes, then taxes will be the first priority. And if the World Bank said we should service our debt first and leave health, we'll start with the debt first. So we are still lacking the economic sovereignty. And also we lack a policy guide us on how the responsibility of the lenders should be when it comes to the purpose of the loan. What we discussed is, when we take the loan, the responsibility of the lender stops the moment they give us the loan. So there's nothing like follow up on what the loan had to do. Let's say if they borrowed the loan to maybe to develop a road, maybe like the Mau Summit. So when they go and negotiate, as soon as the lender gives off the money, that is the end of his responsibility and just waiting for the reservicing of the debt. So we lack that policy that guides the lender to follow up on what the money really did. So we just paying the loan. Maybe that money went overseas to the so-called Pandora Papers and the rest. So we still lack that economic dependency. And also we discussed on food sovereignty, and we discovered that Kenya, on the hunger index, we are 103 out of 123. You can imagine the level of situation we are in. We also discussed that 36% of Kenyans are malnourished. That means 36% of Kenyans, it's like something like 15 million Kenyans are not healthy, as we discussed. So we also lose 30 to 40% of our food produce to the road to the market. That means our food, 30% of our food get destroyed on the road to the market. You can imagine that situation is worsening. And up here, we are saying that 30% of Kenyans die because they lack food. So two things don't match. We also discussed on the geopolitical aspect of fertilizers affecting our soils. We are forced to take fertilizers that we don't even interrogate how it will affect our soils, how it will affect our air, and also we are forced to take fertilizers just because maybe the president wanted to get the political mileage, or the president wants to maybe have some fundings on it. So we still have that notion that whatever our president will give us is good for us. So we still like that one. We also discussed about housing, and on housing, we are having a mistake, or we are having a disparity between the plan and what is happening actually. We discussed on the affordable housing project at the Prestige, and we discovered that 30% of that project will go to the market. That means the private sector will sell to people at higher prices, and then the 70% will go to social security and affordable housing. So you can imagine if a person from Kibra will be able to get a house from that area. Uh, Thank you. Asante.
Thank you very much. Hiyo ni group ya pesa. Anyone from the group who wants to add anything? Okay. Just to add two things is how not just the debt and is colonized. It is our trade partners. How the colonizers never left. They still own all the land. That land is what we are using for housing, the best farms, the exports, Kericho, Finleys, and so on, Del Monte, Camellia, Kakuzi. Um, they have remained trade partners because they benefit. They even have tax waivers. So we are very far from economic sovereignty. What national interest are we serving by allowing a small political class and a foreign political class to own most of our land? Redistribution and restoration never ever happened. And then ultimately, what can be done about it? The only way to reset and get back to economic sovereignty and national interest is when all the people rise up. Either we create pressure for parliamentarians, or we go back to the street and create enough, maybe different streets or even the streets, create enough pressure to reset the economic system holistically. We left very inspired, and we said the capital city of Kenya needs to move to Baragoi for better land use, so that we have some food. It would be national interest that would help us to develop. Tupea hiyo manini group manyunyu manyunyu manyunyu, twende manyunyu manyunyu unagonga patatatatatatatatatatata manyunyu 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 rasha 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 radi. Asante sana. Group number 3, watu wa ni elimu, watu wa elimu na utu. Fantastic, you have the floor. Heritage and utu is in the perfect.
Good afternoon. So our interests were securing education for social advancement, and co-interest 7, safeguarding our nationhood, cultural heritage and history. So I'll start with 3. Misplaced priorities within the education sector. Education budgeting. For example, for the year 2025-2026, it ranged about 700 billion, with more than 55% of the same into payment of salary within the TSC. Yeah, so while the State Department of Science, Innovation and Research received less than 1% of the similar budget, like less than 1% of 700. So our recommendation was review the budget with priorities into innovation, research, and science. Thank you. Point two. Accessibility, equity, and affordability, especially within the rural areas. I think that's a self-explanatory point. People with disabilities, as the third point, we lack infrastructural development to cater for people with disabilities. So that should be done to ensure equity and proper inclusion. The student learner ratio, there is a very clear deficit with shortage of teachers. For example, you walk into a primary classroom, you find 100 learners who've been allocated a single teacher. Yeah, it's overproduction, oversupply of qualified teachers with no real posting, no allocation of the TSC number. The TSC number now comes with posting of jobs. Also, train teachers to deal with curriculum subjects. You find a situation where, of course, the teacher has gone through school and they've learned, but they lack the technicalities to deal with a particular complex subject. Yeah. As a country, we are very exam oriented. And as much as we appreciate the importance of assessments, there's a lot of money going into the assessment department, while the impact of the same is very little. Like, yes, the objective of assessing is rarely met. Yeah, I think we're done with education. So wait, no, not yet. Two more. Subjects provided within our curriculum are too complex for a Kenyan context because of lack of exposure and little to no infrastructure to practice the knowledge. For example, a grade 10 pupil, grade 10, no, like a 10-year-old pupil being taught about marine and mining. Where exactly are they even supposed to practice the knowledge? We do not have provision of such a system. We are not that advanced, sorry to say. The Ministry of Education should be run by people who are acknowledgeable of education planning. Yes, people who've studied, not entirely studying education planning, but should be, because now that it's another story, this is Kenya, but should be at least be knowledgeable. They should know what education planning is all about. The three core values of education, which are leadership, policy, and the various technicalities. Yes, they should be clearly defined within those various competencies within the running of the ministry. Our last topic, which is seven or nine, safeguarding our nationhood, cultural heritage and history. Well, this was a complex one, so tunajitetea. We did have a time of positive arguing. Our first point will be incorporate cultural knowledge into educational curriculum. For example, local dialects, etc. Our foods, appreciation of traditional cultural foods. Create systems where this is lived, where this become a lived reality. For example, while in our conferences, the kind of food we eat, Kenda, Radisson or Sarova, which was the food provided in the hotel menus pastas, spaghettis, all those Western foods. So let's appreciate traditional food and encourage the production of such. Yeah. Integration of cultural art has into our workspaces. For example, TISA, you can set a day in your weekday, for example, Friday, and you wear your traditional clothes just as a way of appreciating it. Accessibility, affordability to our cultural artifact centers. For example, the National Museum, make it open, of course, with a structure and order, but make it open and accessible to learners. And the rates, the entry rates, yeah, tweak them to be affordable. The last one should be protect a cultural heritage. For example, our traditional medicine, the neem plants, morubaine, aloe vera, and their various uses. Also, organic farming. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We tisa muoni hata bana yetu hapa iko na na vitu African calabash nini. But thank you for the challenge. We need to retain our identity. Thank you very much for that. We were supposed to. Did Dr. Githai come yesterday? He was on the program. Okay. I-
Among the team that was to join virtually, we really apologize. Some of them have been disenfranchised.
Okay.
But we also appreciate that when the next group presents, one of the resource persons who was supposed to input their Dr. Rosalyn Akombe
Akombe.
is actually online,
Online.
would be
Okay.
able to give some input. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. On education, I noticed the World Bank just released data that we are doing very well. Yeah, they released the data that our education system is,
Perfect.
yeah, it's very good. It's the best, one of the highest
Can
in
I
terms of creating human capital with knowledge. It's one of the highest. So when you say we need to change, I don't know, but again, whose interest? In their interest, our education system is very good. In our own words, it may be slightly different. Maybe even the analysis we are doing in here, if it was done already in classrooms, we would have a very conscientized population that comes ready from the time they are applying for jobs, because we can't do this alone as civil society. The bankers need to be moving this. Sorry, I know Dr. Githai, so let me speak about indigenous seed. We all understand, and there is a ruling. But alternative medicine, this country had Professor Obel, who created the medication for HIV. But it was somehow, there was no strong national interest to protect it. Okay? Advance it, create an industry, employ, create intellectual property protection for it. It just disappeared like that. Dr. Githai, who was to join us, does alternative medicine. You know, when you hear alternative medicine, tunazitanga mitishamba, si ndio? But that's what China uses and packages them into tablets. That particular doctor professor provides sickle cell anemia treatment for all of Uganda. But here in Kenya, all we've done is persecute him, his farm, and his laboratory, so that then he does not produce at scale. Sickle cell anemia is very difficult to treat. He has treatment, I think, for like 3 cancers, just tablets, which now the East has taken and has commercialized. So the opportunities that we are losing by not embracing our own. And when you think about well-being, it means we would have gotten health well-being, because we would have had accessible medication from our own product, so it is safe enough. It is not affected by fluctuation. We treat our own, we export, we create wellness because we become a hub for alternative medicine, research, jobs. Our education system becomes more respected. For those of us now who care about taxes, we now start exporting. Our Kenya shilling becomes the strongest. So when you think about culture and appreciating what we have, the natural resource we have here, it's very heavy, and I hope we can carry it forward. Finally, hii sijapigia makofi, si ndio? Oh, top up.
Briefly, and
Top up.
thank you. Yes. Not that at all, top up. Diana, you mentioned fact that World Bank has just pronounced itself. When it comes to education, we are perfect. Anything and everything education in Kenya, we are perfect. That conversation, I saw it going round, and somebody actually said we should not really beat ourselves so badly. We are doing well. And I wrote a very small paragraph because I was concentrating here. I want Maxwell to read it because where I posted it, he is there. I wrote it at 1 o'clock. Can you read it?
Okay, very much. It reads, I attended a quality education conference in Tanzania last year. A coalition from Kenya was the authority guiding other African country reps on how education reform agenda has successfully worked. A good practice should be copied by others. Case of transition from 844 to CBC. I called out that fraud because I've learned not to let myself be tortured 1,000 times. Let's get back to the Limu Bora framework of principles and standards for quality and inclusive education. We'll never go wrong with that as a reference.
Thank you. The person I was referencing is a Kenyan from civil society. And when you see and hear the World Bank speak, they have backers. They are people who actually give them that confidence. They come and say it is working. This was last year when junior school had failed. Preparation for senior school, zero. But they used the Kenyan education reforms and transition as the best case study. And that's why I wrote that. I said we should not be torturing some of us. In fact, when the person realized I was in the hall and I was going to speak, he came to explain to me that, you know, you don't know some of these things, they're just happening. I said, please don't explain it to me. You'll explain it back at home. But here I want to correct some fallacy. I think what we are doing, this is why we are talking of sovereignty and why we are talking of Kenya's national interest. As we speak now, we know that over 44,000 of the teachers have not received their salary, and some are being called interns, even when the government knows they are not supposed to be. In other words, that system is failing on the strength of lack of those teachers. So whoever is saying it is working, is that person speaking for us, or that person is speaking for the World Bank and the IMF? I'm asking you, what is that person, who is that person speaking for? If I'm to ask you here, how many what percentage would you give the success rate of implementation of CBC, which is now the best case study for Africa, according to World Bank? What percentage? 25%? Who is generous? Sorry? 70%? Somebody's very generous. Yeah. But you are not the one in Tanzania I'm referring to. So you can hear others are putting it at 70, 40, 19. I'll put it, if you have 10% working, that would be very generous. I live, I study, I talk, I eat, I breathe education, and I check, and every day, even now, that conversation that was going on, I was interacting with it. And if you want to know that everything is wrong, go to C1 school. I was there last week. C1 school is a national school. I'm saying, I'm giving you an example. Go to a C1 school. I was there in one of them where teachers should not be a problem, but they do not have teachers for 50% of the subjects of grade 10. So how about C4? So the moment we pronounce ourselves that things are working, that's why the government goes to sleep. We are not attacking the government. We are dealing with the issue of the future of this country, Kenya's national interest. We need education of quality for our children, for their children, and not for the politicians whose children are not in those schools. CPC, thank you.
Wakereketo wamekerwa kabisa. Probably maybe we need to author report that show, even let's look for the metrics that the World Bank used to rate us the best. Okay? So that then we are able to inform with something. And I know Elimubora can provide us with this particular report. CBC, some private schools have really adapted it in a way that they are enticing parents who can pay, so they don't need even to go to an international school by adapting CBC. But our public schools, truth be told, CBC is one of the worst calamities for inequalities and marginalization. Children will live there. How do you make a child play an imaginary guitar? Why? Where are our children swimming on sand, on soil, clay soil? Because there are exercises for a swimming pool. So you must learn backstroke. There are no rivers. It's a desert. They swim. These are things we need to speak to and just address, because our population is majority youth.
I wanted to ask, the World Bank was comparing us to who? Really? Oh, okay. Okay. I just wanted to find out.
Top of the world. Top of the world. Which it is. Was your hand up?
Well, Boaz, I beg to differ whatever World Bank has to say about our education system and the kind of quality it's produced in terms of human capital. The current job market is composed of people who did the 844, and we all know that is the group that is facing the highest level of unemployment. So where exactly are these people practicing? Where exactly is this human capital growing, and ni metrics gani hizo wametumia?
No, in terms of skills, wanasema we are skilled, and maybe it may be informed by you know we are a major market that is used especially for the digital market. All countries that are negotiating, they come to Kenya because what happened during the NAC government, that level of education and literacy is very good. But if the metrics is the transition from CBC, from 844 to CBC, we are not a success story. But if it is the general literacy that has been created among the youthful population, it's the skills, maybe not yet the employability. But I am not here to hold inaitwa nini? Brief for the World Bank. This one I see it's annoying people. Haya, twende. CS education, respond.
I don't have a lot to say. my children are not in school; they're big people. But it annoys me that these people from outside keep telling us what we should think about our institution. We know what we're doing. We know where we want to go. We know when it is bad, and I think that we should stop. I mean, let them say whatever they want, but I think we also need to respond in the national interest and tell them we know where we're going. We are not a first class nini digital nation because of them. It's because of us, you know? We shocked them. We shocked them when we did M-Pesa. We shocked them. And we may even shock them more if they allow us to do what we want to do and go where we want to go.
There, you people clap. This feels like where the clap is. Ooh, you know, we let out that scream and say we know where we want to go, and we will define our national interest on matters education and utu and everything else around our culture. Group 4, our governance architecture, rule of law, devolution, and environment. Karibuni sana. You want to connect the PowerPoint? They are very ready.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So we're doing co-interest number 6 on promotion of the rule of law, accountable and democratic governance, and promoting devolution and accountable delivery of services to the citizen at the community level. So I will start with the first one on the rule of law. And our position when we started, the context was that we do not have accountability in our governance. Kenya is mad with impunity, corruption, conflict of interest, and therefore we do not respect the law as Kenyans generally. And that is why we are saying that there's no way we are going to protect the national interest if we do not respect the law. So one of the accountability mechanisms that is engraved in the Constitution is Article 10 and Chapter 6 on leadership and integrity and principles of governance. However, we identified a fundamental problem that is impeding the realization of these articles, and that lies in the provisions on, for example, Article 199 of the Constitution. We can check it up, where disqualified members of parliament leaders can have redress all through. So the institutional mechanisms that have been set up like EACC, IEBC, they do not have the last word on whether you are qualified to vie or not. You can go to court and then the court can stop that decision and you go on to vie. An example being the former leadership of TNA during the two or what elections, 2013 elections. So that is what happened. That while they were in The Hague, here in Kenya, we could not stop them from vying for presidency, and we are going on with that up to now. So we were suggesting that we need the action point for this rule of law. That is just an example, and I'm just providing highlight. We were suggesting that as much as we had a good chapter 6, we went ahead and defeated it with other provisions that make sure we are not holding leaders accountable. From our side, we are saying this chapter 6 is supposed to hold the leaders in position and those who want to come. So if you want to come in leadership and you don't meet chapter 6, you are not supposed to enter into leadership. So we are suggesting an amendment to the Constitution, starting with Article 1999 and the others, to ensure that leaders of integrity come in that respect the rule of law. That is just one of the ways that we are proposing to go about respecting the rule of law. Okay, so that is on co-interest number 6. I proceed on promoting devolution and accountable delivery of services to the citizens of Kenya. So we started this conversation by painting a picture of how we have been since the pre-colonial period. And we started during the colonial era with a marginalized majority because we are being led by the minority. And as such, we were deprived of fundamental rights, and the colonial rule was meant to extract resources for the few. And when the new government, the post-colonial government came, the same structure continued of marginalization. The hierarchy was maintained, and the people at the bottom were the most affected because the people maintained the structures of the colonial government, and then excluding the majority of the people. At that time, people did not have any sovereignty. So we come to the leadership of President Moi. That is when we see an iota of devolution coming in through the Majimboism and something that we have been educated upon called the District Focus for Rural Development that came in during the President Moi era. And this was cemented through sessional paper number 10. We can go and read that during our time and see how it informs what we have today or how the developments came in. So that one still, even though Majimboism was something that President Moi wanted, he still wanted to have centralized control and have control of power. So much of it was still centralized. Still, the people at the community were marginalized. And then come the Constitution 2010. This is where now we witness devolution. Because we have, as we stated in our group discussion, that the Constitution is a transformational document. It went and inverted the pyramid. The other way, it was small up controlling down people suffering. This time is recognizing the sovereignty of the people, and that is what devolution is. Devolution was meant to bring back power to the people. So that is what we were trying to say. And now we went ahead to now discuss whether devolution has like lived its purpose, whether it's achieving what it's supposed to do. And that is when we came up with a conversation on leadership representation for women, marginalized communities, PWDs. All these people have been included within the devolution setup. Although we have problems with the achievement of two-thirds rule, because nowadays you would see, for example, women in leadership, you are only nominated, you are told, kaeni tu mtanominatiwa. So it's not really a thing of participation, active participation in political leadership, but a point of reward. So the power imbalance is still there, but we say that is devolution is still serving its purpose. Now, we went to discuss the issue of the cost of devolution and asking ourselves whether we have devolved corruption and whether devolution is an expensive venture. And for that, we came to discuss and said devolution is not really an expensive venture. The only problem is that we have a lot of pilferage and mismanagement of resources that is going downwards. So the issue is not whether devolution, and we compared and said during the era of where we didn't have devolution, we had municipalities, we had the system where we had PCs and DCs, and that system actually used more funds than we do in devolution. So the point is that devolution is not expensive. We just need proper management of the resources. So and also devolution has brought in proper visibility of the people, because right now people can go to the governor's office in their area and demand accountability there wherever they are. So what we were talking about when we came to the action points related to making devolution better, because the core interest is for our national interest, we have to promote devolution and democratic governance for the people down. And we said number one is to empower people to sufficiently embrace their sovereignty. So that means we have to better public participation. While we have the idea of public participation in the constitution, the same has not been realized properly through legislation. And we were trying to say that this perhaps is a strategic move not to properly realize public participation. And then the other thing that was a bit hot was taking money to the counties. So we were asking ourselves, for example, we use the example of the Kinakura, Kera, these roads authorities that are run by national governments. We have authorities that more money is being held in healthcare by the national government than the counties, and yet health is being run by the counties. So now you ask yourself, why is that money that is being spent by national government for these functions that can be done by the counties not being given to the counties so that they can be able to allocate it and use it as they wish to bring development to the people? So we feel that taking some of these functions away from national government to the counties might be able to help. And one of the radical propositions we had here is that even police should be devolved. We were like, this should be a local function. Is it? So that is also a question that we discussed. So those are the proposition. Number one, public participation. Number two, taking more money to the counties, abolishing some of these institutions that are only mismanaging funds and not doing what they are supposed to do. And then in terms of marginalized groups, we talked about that, entrenching the two-thirds rule and advocating for it more properly. And then also, we have to change how we elect people. So our members proposed a mixed member or proportional presentation. So that means that we have to change our electoral system where we have proportions. During elections, we get the numbers that we want so that we don't come again and we have to meet the quotas the way huwa tunajazajaza huko kwa political parties. So if we change and use the mixed member approach, we are going to have a more nuanced leadership composition within the leadership. So we talked about, I think that's about it, what we talked about devolution, unless I have forgotten something important. Team? Yes.
Good evening. Najua mmechoka, so I don't want to take so much time speaking. She has left out something that we had discussed in regard to the rule of law and accountability. We identified that one of the factors that lead to low levels of accountability in the governance space is the lengthy judicial processes. Some might refer to that as robustness, but the lengthiness between filing a case and a verdict being reached perpetuates the low levels of accountability. One, in that these leaders can railroad the judiciary until a verdict is reached. Bwana Dave gave us a very candid recollection of an instance where there was an electoral dispute about a top up that was done incorrectly. A case was filed, and by the time a verdict was being reached, the other guy that was not supposed to be holding this position had already served his term. And then the court ruled in favor of the other party. So you see, the lengthiness of this dispensation of justice is one, contributing to the low levels of accountability, and two, is taking away from the judiciary's identity as a reliable tool for enforcing the law and for finding justice. So we proposed placing a cap and a time limit, a timeline between when a case is filed with regard to the governor. I want you to think about outside even the like electoral disputes and governance cases, other cases too in generally. Like for instance, Jana we saw on the news the victims of the 2023 protests were getting their justice yesterday, 2 years later. Are you seeing the picture that I'm trying to paint? Like the lengthiness of the dispensation of justice. No, I'm talking about just the judiciary in general, but placing a timeline was in electoral cases between when a petition is filed and when a verdict is reached with regard to subsection 3 of Article 99 of the Constitution. Sorry? Yeah.
We're talking about
Thank you.
The discussion here is about Article 99, subsection 3, and Article 193, subsection 3. They have to do with disqualification. You know, 99 discusses how people are disqualified from running for office to parliament. And 193 discusses how people are disqualified for running for office to the county assembly. So they list all manner of things in 1 and 2. Then they come to 3 and say, but they cannot be disqualified until they have exhausted the appellate process. Now, the argument is the following. If you work for government as a watchman in parliament, when you're being hired, part of the requirements is Chapter 6 compliance. So at the point of being considered for employment, you must show that you have nothing against you. Once you've been hired, if you make a mistake and you end up in court for a criminal offense, you are automatically suspended from office. However, in Kenya, if you declare that you want to run for office and you are a conman in Karachuonyo, then you will be allowed to run in spite of people knowing that you stole from some hospital called Kenyatta, and you will become an MP, and you will say your case is still going to the Supreme Court. And that can happen for eons. The suggestion that was made in our team is the following. For purposes of compliance with Chapter 6, we should do either of the following. We should agree that for equality's sake, other public servants who have similar cases like politicians should enjoy the same benefits politicians enjoy, i.e., they should not be sacked, they should not be sent home until they have completed their case to the final. Alternatively, let politicians suffer the same fate like all other public servants. Now, the third thing we were saying is the following. Because of this lengthy process of delayed cases, there is an MP from somewhere in Bungoma who was jailed for 39 years. And now he's out and he's MP and he's telling people, another one shot people dead that he wants to be governor of. No, governor of Nini, governor of Bungoma. He shot people dead on the election day. He shot somebody dead like Didmas Baraza. So what we are saying is this, we should subject our politicians to the same requirements like anybody wanted to work for the public service. If they have a case against them, they can't be hired. So they can't run for office. Number two, if they are in office already and there is a case against them, they must leave the office on suspension and half a salary like everybody else. So if you're a governor, you don't go back that you're being tried and you will be jailed, or your case will be dealt with long after you were voted out of office. So that's the suggestion. I hope it makes sense.
Thank you. Is there? Okay, we had a session on environment. Will be presented to by someone else through the virtual platform. Don't know if she's ready.
Okay. Thank you very much to that group. And if you recall earlier, Charles indicated part of the problems we are in of the people, the territorial sovereignty, the ideological sovereignty is because we somehow just decided to set aside chapter 6 on ethical leadership. It is not guilty beyond reasonable doubt. It is ethical leadership. Therefore, if there is, kama uko na doa, enda kwanza ukaoge, alafu come present yourself. It creates so much strength, stability, and trust in institution. Even the legitimacy issues of broad-based, right now is broad-based. There was building bridges, handshake, handshake, all that is because we failed to adhere to chapter 6. And until the day we get ready to implement that, we are moving away, further away from building our national interest and our sovereignty. But I like what we have said about the rule of law, timelines, and so on. I know there's a group that is focusing on restoring or trying to reclaim our parliament. There are certain legal practitioners who have said we need to reclaim our courts. After the new constitution, there was a whole process of vetting and ensuring that we have faith in our judiciary. What has happened when a system rots, all of it rots, and it's just a matter of time, and we'll have nowhere to run other than the people. Well, at this, can I urge you, please, wale wana deal na Kenya National yenye natufanyia reparations, can you make sure that they refer to the sovereign power of the people and the constitution as the place where they are getting the mandate to work on a compensation framework and not a gazette notice by the president. They were directed, directed. Please, whoever is friends and they can still listen to you. It's like self-mutilating yourself. If you can, please do. The institutions I work closely with, controller of budget, went through a similar process, and she turned around and realized her only defense and way to follow is the constitution. For all independent offices and independent commission, please urge them to refer back to the constitution and we the people. Having said that, we've come to the end of day one. Or is Rosalie now available?
Hello?
Okay.
Yeah, you know where she is? She actually delayed going to the office. So it reached a point she had to drop
Okay.
because she was rushing also to have sessions in the office. So she has passed her apologies, but she was listening in, and I think she says next time, because she says this is the first conversation
Yeah.
beginning, so she'll be with
Okay.
us along the way. Thank you, but we are sorry for her and
And
others
others who
whom
are
we disrupted.
Okay. Our apologies to especially our online audience. To you, our physical audience, thank you very much for sharing. Our able rapporteurs will capture. These were the highlights, but I'm sure we had more detailed conversation. Tomorrow we are not meeting here because this is not the ODM party. The ODM party will be here exercising part of their democratic right of holding a national delegate conference. Therefore, tomorrow we will be at the Kenyatta International Conference Center. Okay, it's called Kenyatta or Kenya? Convention Center. Kenyatta International Convention, KICC in town. Come ready, bright. Tomorrow we make some declarations as we the people. Come bright. If you have any color that resembles the flag, please wear it. Last comment, then I hand it over. Who is closing? Ambassador or Awori? Let me. Yours is a question. Where exactly in KICC? Who knows the room? Meg? Um, we, at the entrance.